We're leaving for Europe tomorrow, Mom, so you won't need the beach house anymore. That's what my daughter said, not softly, not nervously, but with the same tone she uses when telling a waiter her order is wrong. No warning. No conversation, just that. Then she pushed a thick manila envelope across the table toward me with the tips of her fingers like it was trash she didn't want to touch. I already sold the house, she added, still looking at her phone. Oh, and the car too, you weren't using it anyway. I swear I felt my spine go cold. I blinked once, twice. You sold my beach house? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She sighed loudly, annoyed that I even dared to question her. Mom, can we not do this? You're always so dramatic. She stirred her iced coffee and finally looked at me, eyebrows raised. It's fine, it's done. You'll thank me later. Thank her for selling the one place my husband and I built together, for selling the car he restored by hand, for making decisions about my life like I was some confused neighbor she barely knew. My chest tightened so hard I could feel my heartbeat in my teeth. I opened the envelope with trembling hands, contracts, signatures, transfer documents. My signature wasn't on any of them, none. I swallowed hard. Emily, how did you even do this? I asked. She shrugged. Dad put everything under the family trust. I'm the trustee now. Remember, it's basically all ours, and with Europe coming up tomorrow, we needed cash fast. Don't look at me like that. My world tilted. For a second, I honestly thought I might faint. And before I go any further, let me introduce myself, because by now you're probably wondering whose daughter talks like this. My name is Margaret. I'm 63 years old and I lost my husband last year. I thought I still had my daughter. I thought she still had me. I was wrong, terribly wrong, and if you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Because what I'm about to reveal next is the moment everything snapped back into focus. Back to that kitchen, back to my daughter standing there, tapping her nails, waiting for me to stop being difficult. She rolled her eyes again. Mom, seriously, it's not that deep. You don't need a beach house, you barely go outside, and the car you drive like a grandma, this is for the best. She grabbed her purse, tossed her hair over her shoulder and said, "We'll be gone before you wake up, try not to guilt trip me." Then she left, just like that. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was that my late husband had left me something she knew nothing about. Something big, something life-changing. And the minute I discovered what it was, everything she planned for Europe started to crumble. I didn't move from that kitchen chair for a long time after Emily walked out. Her perfume still hung in the air, fake vanilla, too sweet, too sharp. It felt like the scent of someone who'd already decided they were done with you. My hands kept shaking long after the door closed, not from anger, that would come later. It was the shock. The disbelief that your own child can look you straight in the face and strip your life bare without even blinking. I stared at the envelope again, the sale price, the signatures, the finalization stamp. She really did it. She sold my beach house, the one my husband rebuilt after that hurricane, the one where he carved our initials into the back deck. And then she sold my car, the blue one my husband spent 2 summers restoring with his best friend. Gone with her signature, her entitlement, her little plan for a shiny European life. But when I flipped to the last page, I froze. Something didn't add up. The buyer's name, the closing attorney, the agency handling the transfer. None of them were companies I recognized, not even local ones. The agency had a name I'd never heard before, Seven Harbors Holdings. I whispered the name out loud, and something about it made my stomach knot. I grabbed my phone, squinting at the tiny print. The address listed wasn't a real office. It was a P.O. box. A chill ran through me. I thought, no, she wouldn't fall for something shady, would she? But then I remembered the man my daughter was dating, the one dragging her across the world for this European dream. A man I barely knew. A man with a smile that never reached his eyes. A man who talked too fast when money came up. My throat tightened. Had she sold my home to someone connected to him? I opened my laptop, typed the agency name into Google, pressed enter. Nothing. Not a website, not a review, not a single trace of them anywhere. My pulse spiked. I pulled out the car sale paperwork next. Same agency name, same P.O. box, same assistant's email address. This wasn't a coincidence. And if they'd cheated her, they'd cheated me. Somewhere deep in my chest, a quiet voice whispered, "Something's not right, nothing here is right." I stood up so fast the chair scraped across the floor. If they thought I was old, soft, clueless, they were about to find out exactly who my husband married. Because the one thing Emily forgot, the one thing she never bothered to think about was that my husband didn't trust easily. Not with strangers, not with money, and definitely not with our daughter's impulsive choices. He prepared for this. He must have. I walked toward his old office, the room I hadn't opened since the funeral, because I knew exactly where to look next. And what I found inside that room changed everything. My husband's office door hadn't been opened in almost 2 years. Not since the day I closed it after the funeral and told myself, I'll deal with it when I'm stronger. But now I needed answers more than I needed peace. My fingers trembled as I slid the key into the lock. It clicked, a tiny sound that somehow felt louder than Emily's entire tantrum from earlier. The smell hit me first, old paper, pine floorboards. A faint trace of his cologne lingering in the air like he'd just stepped out for coffee. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Grief does that, it reaches the parts of you thought had finished breaking. I whispered, "All right, Jack, help me out here," like he could still hear me. I walked straight to his desk. My husband wasn't the kind of man who hid things in obvious places. If he protected something, he buried it meticulously, quietly, the way men from his generation do. I pulled the top drawer, pens, rubber bands, a half-used notepad. Second drawer, receipts, old business cards. Tax forms he never threw away, nothing. My chest tightened. I remembered Emily's smug voice just hours earlier. "Mom, relax, you don't even use those houses, you don't need a car anyway." She said it like she was taking out the trash. Not ripping open the last pieces of the life I built with her father. I pressed my palms against the desk. I needed to think like Jack. Then it hit me. When we first married, he told me, "Meg, never trust a drawer you can see. The real secrets are where people won't look." I leaned down, slid my fingers under the desk's bottom panel and felt it. A latch, my breath caught. I pulled it. A hidden compartment opened, and inside were 2 things, a thick black folder and a small metal key with a number etched into it. My heart pounded in my ears. I opened the folder first, and there, right on top, was a document with my name on it. Primary owner, Margaret Louise Hart. Owner of what? I flipped the page and my knees almost buckled. There were 6 property deeds. 6, not 1, not 2, 6, all in my name, all transferred quietly by my husband before he died. And one address nearly knocked the breath clean out of me, the luxury building my daughter lives in. The building she has bragged about for years, the one she thought her boyfriend's connections got her into. I felt my hand fly to my mouth. She had no idea I owned the entire place. No idea her perfect European escape depended on me, but the folder wasn't the part that scared me most. That small metal key with the number etched into it, that was the part that made my stomach twist. Because Jack only gave numbers, not labels, to things he didn't want anyone to find. And when I realized what that number matched, I swear my blood ran cold. I held that tiny metal key in my palm, and for a long moment I just stared at it. My husband didn't leave things lying around without purpose. If Jack locked something away, it meant one thing: it mattered. The number etched into the metal was simple, 117B. At first, it didn't click. But then I remembered something. Years ago, before Emily started treating me like some outdated piece of furniture, Jack had taken me to his company's private storage vault downtown. A massive underground facility for clients' confidential documents, blueprints, assets. He'd shown me a row of metal doors. Room 117B was one of them. Back then I joked, "What's in there, treasure?" And he smirked and said, "Only the things worth protecting." That memory hit me like a punch in the chest. My fingers tightened around the key. So while my daughter was across town packing bikinis and bragging about Paris brunches, I was standing in the middle of my late husband's office, realizing he had left me breadcrumbs and that it was time to follow them. I grabbed my coat and left. The drive downtown felt longer than usual. Rain tapped the windshield, streetlights blurred into long yellow streaks, and in my head all I heard was Emily's voice from earlier. "Mom, why are you so tense lately? Relax, you don't even use your beach house." She said that while knowing she had already listed it behind my back. Lord, if only she could see what I was about to see. I parked, went down the elevator into the chilled concrete hallway and walked until I found it. Storage Vault 117B. The metal door looked heavier than I remembered. I slid the key into the lock and it turned with a quiet, almost respectful click. Inside, the room was small, a single overhead bulb humming softly, a table, a locked metal box, and a stack of envelopes tied neatly with twine. My heart thudded. I reached for the envelopes first. They were each labeled in my husband's handwriting, for Margaret, only if needed. My throat tightened. That man, even from the grave, he was still protecting me. I opened the first envelope. My breath stopped cold. Inside was a full, notarized document granting me executive control of Jack's company if anything ever happened to him. Not Emily, not her boyfriend, not the board, me. I opened the second envelope. Bank accounts, subsidiary ownership, shares transferred quietly into my name. Emily had no idea that while she was selling the beach house and my car for pocket money, I now controlled the entire business building her European dream. I sat down, overwhelmed, the paper trembling in my hands. But then I opened the metal box, and what was inside didn't just shock me, it changed every plan I thought I had, because it contained the one thing my daughter feared more than losing money. In the moment I saw it, I knew exactly how her perfect life would fall apart. The metal box was cold, colder than the room, colder than the concrete under my feet, cold the way truth feels before it's spoken. I unlatched it slowly, almost afraid of what my husband thought I might someday need protection from. The lid creaked open. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. At first I didn't understand. They looked like random snapshots, parking lots, fancy restaurants, condo hallways, receipts clipped to the corners. But then my stomach dropped, because in almost every single photo was Emily, and she wasn't alone. In some, she was with a man who was definitely not her boyfriend. In others, she was signing papers, meeting strangers, whispering in corners, and then it hit me, these weren't just photos, they were surveillance shots. Someone had been documenting her every move. My hands shook as I picked up one photo, Emily standing outside a bank, handing over a signed form with MY's signature on it. Forged perfectly, I felt the blood drain from my face. My husband knew, he knew she had been sneaking into accounts. He knew she was prepping to take control. He knew, and he prepared for it. "Jack, you saw this coming?" I whispered to the empty room. My throat tightened. I pulled out the next document inside the box, a thick envelope stamped with a lawyer's seal. Inside was a formal report. Emily had been meeting with a real estate agent for months. She had been planning to liquidate anything that belonged to us, my beach house, my car, and any other assets she could pass off as unused property. Worse, she requested an early transfer of ownership of the luxury building she lived in. The building I now legally owned. My pulse hammered in my temples. Page after page, the report detailed her plans, her lies, her manipulation, her willingness to shove me aside the moment my usefulness ran out. A quiet, bitter laugh slipped out of me. All this time she thought I was the clueless, helpless old widow who just kept the lights on and stayed out of the way. But my husband, that man, saw farther than any of us. He left me the key. The proof, the power. Tears welled up, but not from sadness, from clarity. From the moment I closed that box, I knew what I had to do. Emily wanted Europe, she wanted freedom. She wanted to live like Mom was just an ATM she didn't have to say thank you to. All right. But she was going to learn something the hard way. You don't steal from a woman who built your world and walk away untouched. I wiped my face, slid every document back into the folder, locked the box, and stood up. Because what I planned next was going to flip her entire future upside down. The drive home from the vault felt different this time. Not heavy, not painful, but sharp, focused, like something inside me had finally clicked into place. For the first time in years, I wasn't the mother being talked over. I wasn't the widow being pitied. I wasn't the woman expected to simply sign whatever was put in front of her. I was the owner, the executor, the one holding the entire deck of cards, and my daughter had no clue. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the porch lights were still on, the same ones Emily always said looked old-fashioned and embarrassing. Funny how those embarrassing lights were shining over a home she tried to sell without asking me. I walked inside, locked the door behind me, and placed the black folder on the kitchen table like it was a loaded weapon. Because it was. The first thing I did was call my husband's lawyer, a quiet, serious man named Harris who had handled every major paper Jack ever signed. He answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Hart," he said, voice respectful, "it's been a while, how can I help you?" I took a breath. "Harris, we need to initiate a reversal, multiple reversals." There was a pause, then a slow inhale. You found the documents, didn't you? Yes, I said quietly, and I'm ready to use them. Within an hour, Harris was at my house with a stack of forms. He spread everything on my dining table, adjusting his glasses, flipping through the deeds with the same expression a surgeon gives when examining an injury. Your husband prepared these with precision, he said. He knew exactly what he was protecting you from. I swallowed hard. He pointed to the first paper. This reverses the unauthorized listing of your beach house. He pointed to the second. This blocks any future attempt to sell your car. Then the third, this reinstates your sole ownership of the luxury building. I signed each form slowly, one stroke at a time. My hands didn't shake once. When I finished, Harris gathered the papers into neat stacks. Once I file these electronically, he said, no bank, no agent, no buyer can touch a single asset without your permission. Good, I whispered. Let's make sure no one tries. But Harris wasn't done. He hesitated, then pulled a long white envelope from his briefcase. Your husband wanted you to have this too, he said. He instructed me to deliver it the moment you opened Vault 117B. My breath caught. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a signature authorization granting me full controlling interest in Jack's company effective immediately. Not advisory, not partial, absolute. My chest tightened. Emily thought she was stepping into Europe with a man who had connections. She was about to learn those connections answered to me. The moment I realized the power that paper gave me was the moment I knew exactly how I'd stop her. Because her boyfriend, the one funding the trip, the one she bragged about endlessly, worked for my husband's company. And with one phone call, I could make sure he never boarded that plane. I stared at that authorization letter for a long moment, long enough for my tea to go cold and the kitchen clock to tick deep into the night. Full control over the company, over the accounts. Over every department, including the one her boyfriend worked in. Emily always bragged that he was irreplaceable, that the company needed him too much for anything to ever touch their lifestyle. But she had no idea who signed his paychecks now. I picked up the phone. For a second, I hesitated. Not because I doubted what needed to be done, but because part of me still remembered the little girl who once asked me to braid her hair before school. The little girl who used to cry if I left for work too early. The child who once held my face and whispered, "Mommy, don't ever leave me." But that little girl, she was long gone. Replaced by a woman who didn't even blink before selling the home her father built. A woman who casually announced a Europe trip while tossing my car keys into a real estate agent's hands. A woman who, somewhere along the way, decided love was optional and money was mandatory. No, I wasn't doing this to hurt her. I was doing this to stop her from hurting me again. I dialed the number. The call connected to the company's HR director, a calm, older woman who had been with the business even longer than my husband. "Mrs. Hart," she said instantly, "we heard from Mr. Harris that you're stepping in. How can I assist?" I took a breath. "I need to freeze the contract renewal for employee ID number 4721, effective immediately." There was a brief silence as she checked the file. "That's Miss Emily Hart's partner," she said carefully. "He's due for his quarterly bonus next week." "Not anymore," I replied. "Cancel everything, he's fired, and I don't want him accessing any company funds or documents before the end of the day." Her tone shifted, respectful, decisive. "I'll handle it personally." When I hung up, my hands felt strangely steady, because in that moment I knew exactly what was coming next. Emily wouldn't find out right away. No, those consequences tend to unfold slowly, the way truth creeps under a locked door until it fills the entire room. But something else happened that night. Just as I was gathering the documents to put them away, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. A screenshot from the company's internal system, showing my daughter's boyfriend's account flagged, frozen, terminated, and underneath the screenshot someone had typed, "Thought you'd want to know, he's already packing his things." I should have felt guilty. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, relief. But that relief didn't last long, because exactly 10 minutes later I heard a car screech into my driveway, a car door slam, heavy footsteps rushing toward my porch. And then, bam, 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 someone started pounding on my door like they wanted to break it down. The pounding on my door shook the whole hallway, not a polite knock, not confused tapping. This was rage, the kind of anger that comes when someone realizes the ground beneath them just dropped 10 feet. I tightened my robe, walked slowly toward the door, and peeked through the small side window. It was him, my daughter's boyfriend, Jason, red-faced, sweating, eyes wild like someone had just ripped the world out from under him. He slammed his palm against the door again. "Open the door, Mrs. Hart," his voice cracked from yelling. "We need to talk," my heart hammered, but not from fear, from clarity. Because the moment I saw him standing there, furious and desperate, I finally understood one thing: he wasn't here to see me. He was here because he wanted his gravy train back. I opened the door only a few inches, leaving the chain lock on. "What do you want, Jason?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He leaned in, his jaw clenched so tight the muscles in his neck jumped. "What did you do?" he hissed. "You think firing me fixes your problems?" He laughed, short, bitter. "You just screwed up the only income your daughter and I have." There it was, not "we're hurt," not "we're confused," not even "why," just entitlement. Cold, ugly entitlement. I raised an eyebrow. "My problems? Jason, you were stealing from the company, using corporate cards for personal trips, lying on expense reports. You're lucky I didn't send the police." He froze. Then his voice dropped into a near growl. "Emily told me you're losing it, that you're clinging to things that aren't yours anymore. I didn't think you'd actually go this far." I almost laughed. "Things that aren't mine." My husband built everything Jason touched: the job, the building, the credit lines he abused, and now Jason stood on my porch acting like I'd taken his birthright. But before I could speak, he stepped closer, trying to wedge the door open. "Undo it," he snapped. "I'm not playing. Turn my access back on, call HR, fix it." I tightened the chain so the door couldn't budge. "Jason," I said softly, "the only thing I'm fixing is the mess you two made while thinking I was too old to notice." His eyes narrowed. "You think Emily's gonna take this well," he said. "She already bought her ticket. She's expecting me to meet her at the airport. When she finds out what you did," I cut him off. "Oh, sweetheart, she doesn't know anything yet, does she?" His breath caught. There it was, the crack in the armor he hadn't told her. He was hoping to replace the job quickly, clean up the mess before she ever noticed. But now he was trapped, and he knew it. He backed away slowly, fury shaking his hands. "This isn't over," he spat. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Then he stormed down the steps, jumped into his car, and peeled out of the driveway so fast the tires screeched. But he wasn't the person I was worried about. Because not even 2 minutes later, my phone lit up on the counter. Emily calling. My phone vibrated so violently on the counter it nearly slid off. "Emily calling." I didn't even have time to breathe before I heard her voice explode through the speaker the second I answered. "What did you do?" "No, hi, no, Mom," just that sharp, furious, and shaking with panic. I held the phone away from my ear for a second. Her voice was cracking so badly she sounded like she wasn't breathing right. "Emily," I said calmly, "slow down." "No," she shrieked. "What did you do to Jason's job? He just called me from the parking lot crying. He said you got him fired." I blinked, crying. "The same man who just tried to kick my door down? Interesting." "Emily," I repeated, "you and I both know he was stealing from the company." "Stop," she yelled so loud my hand shook. "Stop acting like you're some CEO. You're a retired old woman with nothing better to do than ruin people's lives." That one stung. It hit in a place I didn't even know was still tender, but I swallowed it down. I needed to stay steady. "I didn't ruin anything," I said. "He dug his own grave. I just stopped him from dragging me into it." She gave a bitter, mocking laugh. "Oh, please, he told me everything. He told me you've been snooping around Dad's old things, making up stories about ownership. Acting like you're in charge." My grip tightened on the counter's edge. "Stories, ownership, acting." She had no idea. "Emily," I said quietly, "your father left very clear," but she cut me off again, her voice suddenly trembling. Not with anger, with fear. "Mom, we already put down the deposit for Europe." There it was, the real reason for the screaming: not loyalty, not love, not concern for Jason. Money, always the money. "And," her voice cracked, "we already gave notice on the apartment." I went still. "You what?" "We're leaving next week," she burst out. "We can't afford to lose his job right now." "We can't afford anything going wrong." I leaned back against the wall. She wasn't just angry, she was trapped, cornered, terrified, and she blamed me for the walls closing in. "Mom," she whispered now, voice small for the first time in years. "If Jason can't get his job back, we're screwed." I closed my eyes. There was the daughter I remembered, not kind, not gentle, but painfully honest in her panic. She inhaled sharply, then practically begged, "Please, just call them. Fix this, do something." I stayed silent, because in that moment I realized something chilling. Emily didn't actually know the truth yet. She didn't know I owned her building. She didn't know I reversed the house sale. She didn't know I controlled her father's company. She didn't know the Europe trip was already dead on arrival. She didn't know, but she was about to, and what she said next, it shattered the last piece of hope I had for her. Because she whispered, cold, raw, and unforgiving, "If you don't fix this, you're dead to me." Her words didn't just sting, they sliced. "If you don't fix this, you're dead to me." I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the dim kitchen tiles like they were suddenly tilting beneath my feet. Dead to her, my own daughter. The same girl I carried for 9 months. The same child I raised through fevers, heartbreaks, scraped knees, nightmares. The same young woman whose college tuition I paid in full, whose wedding dress I bought, whose every mistake I quietly covered so she wouldn't suffer. Dead to her because I didn't save her boyfriend's job. Something in me went still, not angry, not hurt, just done. "Emily," I said softly, "I'm sorry you feel that way." "Sorry?" she spat. "That doesn't fix anything. I swear if you don't fix this, don't ever call me again." A long silence stretched across the line, and then I spoke the truth she'd spent years pretending wasn't real. "Emily, I'm not the one who needs fixing." She inhaled sharply, offended, confused, furious. I continued quietly, "You and Jason have been taking advantage of me for a long time, selling things that aren't yours. Signing papers behind my back, planning a life built on money you didn't earn." "That is not true," she started. "Emily," I said firmly, "your father left everything in my name." Silence. "Not yours, not Jason's." "Mine." Her breath caught on the line. I could practically hear her brain screeching to a halt. "You're lying," she whispered. "No," I said, "I've been quiet, there's a difference." I heard a soft thud like she sat down or dropped something. Then a trembling, "What do you mean everything?" I exhaled slowly. "Emily, the company, the accounts, the properties, the building you live in." Another silence, longer, heavier. "You don't own my building," she finally said, voice breaking. "You don't?" "Dad said your father trusted you," I interrupted gently. "He trusted you'd grow into the woman he raised, but he also knew you were impressionable." She choked out, "So what does that mean?" "It means," I said, "you cannot sell what isn't yours. You cannot use what isn't yours, and you cannot move into a fantasy funded by a man who just lost his job." I heard soft, panicked breathing on the line. Then, "Mom, we already paid for the tickets. We already moved our stuff. The lease ends Friday. We're literally halfway packed." My voice stayed steady. "I know. What are we supposed to do?" she cried. That was the first honest question she'd asked me in months. So I told her the truth, the one she'd avoided, the one she'd mocked me for, the one she never expected to hear. "You come home," she gasped. "You learn how to start over. Without stealing, without lying, without climbing on top of the people who raised you." There was a long, trembling silence. Then I said the final words clearly, calmly, without anger. "And when you get here, you'll find an eviction notice taped to your door, signed by me." She broke into a sob, raw, shocked, betrayed, but I didn't hang up with satisfaction, only closure. Because sometimes the hardest thing a mother can do is save her child from the life she's running toward. And that was the night everything changed.